All right. Prakash, I don't have any fancy equipment like you have, so I'm just going to play from my iPhone. I hope it turns out well. Wow, that was so beautiful. Again, that was so beautiful, Prakash. Thank you for doing it. Again, very inspiring and empowering song. Thank you so much. I don't know if the poor quality had anything to do with my phone, and I apologize if it had to do with that. But you did a great job, and the song is, just so very empowering. Thank you. Matty, do you want to go next?
You're muted, Matty.
Thanks, Vani. These are a series of different sayings from the Bhagavad Gita, and we're reading out. They're all not pertaining to the same matter. They're a set of different things. Okay, so going ahead. Whatever happened, happened for the good. Whatever is happening for the good. Whatever will happen, will also happen for the good. There's a reason you're going through a bad phase, and there's a reason you may be basking in glory. It's a cycle, and you need to quietly accept it. You need not worry about the future, nor should you pay attention to the past. You only have control over the present, so live it to the fullest. Another saying, the soul is neither born and nor does it die. We can achieve nothing if fear is instilled within us. Fear kills ambition, dreams, and even the slight chances of progress. A fearless soul has nothing to worry about because it knows it cannot be caged, and nor can it be stopped. Thus, the fear of death is absurd as our souls don't die. A few small ones. Um, Man is made by his belief. As he believes, so he is. That is, you are what you think you are. Your thoughts make and define you. When meditation is mastered, the mind is unwavering, like the flame of a lamp in a windless place. There is neither this world nor the world beyond, nor happiness for the ones who doubt. Doubts create misunderstandings. Love has no doubts. If it does, then it's not love. We are kept from our goal not by obstacles, but by a clear path to a lesser goal. So, dream big is the message. These are some of the sayings that I hope help us along today.
Thank you, Matty. That was so very well said. These were quotes from the Bhagavad Gita. Thank you so much for doing this. Very thought-provoking quotes. Thank you.
Welcome. Bye.
Kali, do you want to go next?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
I'm reading from the Quran. It's an English translation. It's from Surah 16. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent and the Merciful. He sendeth down the angels with the spirit of his command, unto whom he will of his born men warn mankind that there is no God save me. So keep your duty unto me. He hath created the heavens and the earth with truth. High be he exalted above all that they associate with him. He hath created man from a drop of fluid, yet behold, he is an open opponent. And the cattle he hath created, whence you have warm clothing and uses, and wherein is beauty for you when you bring them home and when you take them out to pasture. They bear your loads for you unto a land you could not reach save with great trouble to yourselves. And horses and mules and asses, that you may ride them. And Allah is the direction of the way. And some roads go not straight. And he had willed that he would lead you all right. It is he who sendeth down water from the sky, whence you have drink, and whence are trees on which you send your beasts to pasture. He has constrained the night and the day and the sun and the moon to be of service unto you, and the stars are made subservient by his command. Herein indeed are portents for people who have sense. He hath cast into the earth firm hills that it quake not with you, and streams and roads that you may find a way, and landmarks, and by the star they find a way. Now I'm going to stop there, but I specifically wanted to read that because it was about what God has created for us as mankind to use. But I think we'll agree that over the last few hundred years, we have misused a lot of what God has created. So we need to think about it and use it appropriately. Thank you.
Thanks, Kali. So very well recited. And again, very soul-stirring recitation. We have so much to learn, so much to improve. Every day is a new experience. Thank you. You've given us a lot to think about. Sashi?
Hi, Vani. So I thought I'll read a little prayer from the Baha'i faith, but I'll start with a little bit about the Baha'i faith. I'm sure many of you know it, but I still thought I would like to introduce that. Throughout history, God has sent to humanity a series of divine educators, known as manifestations of God, whose teachings have provided the basis for the advancement of civilization. These manifestations have included Abraham, Krishna, Zoroaster, Moses, Buddha, Jesus, and Muhammad. Baha'u'llah, the latest of these messengers, explained that the religions of the world come from the same source and are in essence successive chapters of one religion from God. Baha'is believe the crucial need facing humanity is to find a unifying vision of the future of society and of the nature and purpose of life. Such a vision unfolds the benefit for humanity. So the prayer is, O thou kind Lord, thou hast created all humanity from the same stock. Thou hast decreed that all shall belong to the same household. In thy holy presence, they're all thy servants, and all are sheltered beneath thy tabernacle. All have gathered together at thy table of bounty. All are illumined through the light of thy providence. O God, thou art kind to all. Thou hast provided for all, dost shelter all, conferest life upon all. Thou hast endowed each and all with talents and faculties, and all are submerged in the ocean of thy mercy. O thou kind Lord, unite all. Let the religions agree and make the nations one, so that they may see each other as one family and the whole earth as one home. May they all live together in perfect harmony. O God, raise aloft the banner of the oneness of humanity. O God, establish the most great peace. Cement thou, O God, our hearts together. O thou kind God, gladden our hearts through the fragrance of thy love. Brighten our eyes through the light of thy guidance. Delight our ears with the melody of thy word, and shelter us all in the stronghold of thy providence. Thou art the mighty and the powerful. Thou art the forgiving, and thou art the one who overlooketh the shortcomings of all humanity. This is by Abdul-Razak Bahar. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Guha, for the wonderful presentations. And I'm really looking forward to it. It's been stimulating and it's been encouraging us to go forward too. Thank you.
Thanks, Sashi. Thanks for that lovely introduction on the Baha'i faith. Yeah, as you rightly said, as the prayer says, of course, let's put together, let's put away our differences and work together in harmony and focus on love, peace, and service. Thank you. All right, Guha, you're ready?
Yes. Hey, good morning, everybody. I stayed quiet, just listening to the voices of all my old friends. So I just wanted to allow those voices to permeate through my awareness, because I haven't talked to you or met many of you over many decades. Some of you I've kept in contact with, close contact, and some of you moderate level contact, and some like Maddie, for example, I'm hearing for the first time after medical school. So I want to appreciate all of you for coming today and giving me a chance to communicate my perspectives. And I thank Vani. We were just chatting one day and she said, Guha, why don't you present? And I said, oh, well, I never thought of it. She said, go ahead and do it. We'll find a date for you. And here I am. So last time I presented an overview of the problem facing humanity. You know, we are in a crisis. There's no doubt about it. It's a crisis of consciousness. It's not a crisis outside of us. The crisis is within each one of us. Yes, the masters have come, the prophets have come, Jesus, Buddha, we had the Bhagavad Gitas and the Qurans and the Torahs and the Bibles, but man has not fundamentally changed. And why is that? Why did we not understand the teachings of all these master teachers and the prophets and the master scriptures? One of the big problems is that there is a problem in the way we read these things. We have read it verbally, intellectually, but we have not actually participated in experiencing the reality and the truth itself. So my approach today is going to be to devolve. We as humans have evolved into a very complex mindset. And now I'm going to go through a process of devolution. Devolution is going backward and going backward and backward until we reach the very source of existence, our awareness of who we are. And from there, that substrate is the platform on which this edifice that we know as our life has been built. So I want to read off a few statements up front. I'll do a little longish introduction, so bear with me. So I said the preface, the preamble to what's going to follow, so we all understand where this is going. And again, as I've stated before, these are not expressible in human language. So we are only pointing, because the pointing, if I describe the sun it is nowhere, the description is nowhere near the brilliance of the sun. We describe a mountain, the mountain description, I might say it's tall and it's brown, it's beautiful, sun plays on it. It's nowhere like standing on the mountain peak. So the bottom line of all the scriptures, all the religions, is self-experience and self-understanding. We don't do that, and we place God as something external, far away from us, and we've not understood the simple principle that everything starts and begins with us, then we've lost the fragrance, the essence of religion itself. And the word religion, as Jiddu Krishnamurti, going back to JK, he said religio is connecting back, hooking back to oneself. Starting with oneself, we go full circle of life. And then when we are in our deathbed, we're taking the final breath, we're back only to ourselves. There's nothing. The world is fading away and all exists. The only reality that exists is me. And we see ourselves for the first time. And the goal now is to see with urgency, even as we are alive, to see ourselves. So I want to read off a couple of statements. One is Carl Jung's beautiful statement: people will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own selves. And what does that mean? Our entertainment industry, cricket, music, everything externalized. The mind externalizes everything. And never for a minute have we paused and said, who am I or what am I? So that's going to be the focus of our self-understanding in this next 40 or 50 minutes. Now, can you go to the next slide, Vani?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the title of this
Give me a
talk,
second. Stay here or move?
yeah, this is good. I'm trying to, yeah, it's minimized. I'm trying to see it in, yeah, I got full screen. So, you know, last time we talked about the movement of the mind, the movement of thought. So, you know, in this beautiful Bhagavad Gita statement that was read by Maddie, in that is the very essence of the Gita. You know, you could read the whole of the Gita, right? So some things epitomize the very essence of that whole scripture of 300 pages is all in one little statement or one little line. And that's the pearl. You know, when you dive deep, Ramana said, dive deep and find the single pearl in the mother of the pearl that you can call as yourself. And that pearl, as we dive into ourselves, is this statement in Bhagavad Gita. And this is the same statement in Christianity. The most beautiful statement in Christianity that Ramana referred to all the time was, be still and know that I am, okay? And the same thing is the statement of lamp in a windless place. And the Zen pathway uses this all the time, right? Wind is the movement of thought. It's the metaphor for thought, wind, right? And windless place is when thoughts subside. And Rumi says it beautifully, quieten your mind, so you can hear the cosmic sound, right? So when our mind is so full, preoccupied with the world, we have no chance to listen to ourselves. And that's the big problem. So lamp in the windless place refers to nirvana, okay? And nirvana is Sanskrit. It's Indo-European, very easy to understand. Nir is no, vana is wind, root word, the wind vein, for example, vana is wind. So windless place, no wind, a windless place is nirvana. That is the blowing out of the mind stuff. Yogascha chitta vritti nirodha. Remember, we talked about Patanjali's statement. Yoga is not the contortion of body. It's not the sitting in asanas. It is the quietening of the mind stuff, as he called it. Chitta vritti nirodha. It is a nonsensical chattering of the mind that has to be quietened. And then you can hear yourself, the cosmic self. You can hear yourself. So the other statement that Maddie referred to, the soul does not die. Why do you worry? So we worry because we think we are the mind, right? That's the basic misunderstanding. What the mind defines as we is who we take us for. And the mind are just adjuncts. The mind tells you you're a doctor, you're a teacher, you're a professor, this is your house, this is your family, this is your son, this is your daughter, this is what I've achieved, this is my bank account. All of those are adjuncts. They're added on like little flowers to a garland string. But what is essence? What's the one that holds the flowers together is the string. And the string itself is empty of all these adjuncts. So when you go to sleep, like we said earlier, when you go to sleep, when you slip off to sleep, when you say bye to the whole world and you're back to only yourself, and then you go to sleep, deep into sleep at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm saying 2 o'clock in the morning, but when you're fast asleep at 2, you don't know the time. At that point, you're neither timeless, you're timeless and spaceless. You're neither in time nor in space. You don't know who you are. You don't know if you're a male, female. You don't know if you're Prakash or Chitra or Kali or Maddie or Vani. You have no name. You have no place. And that nameless, spaceless state is like a stem cell. It's an undifferentiated stem cell, the very essence of our being itself. And that you could call the heart of existence, the heart of God. You could say you're tapping into God. And when I try to explain to people, I say that is Brahman. That is the unifying source. Don't give it a name. The minute you give it a name, you lost the battle. The minute you say Jesus, the minute you say Allah, the minute you say Krishna, the minute you say Vishnu, the minute you say Buddha, the battles have already begun. The mental dogma, the mental constructs have begun. And with that begins my God and your God, and the battle for God, begins. So that's the sad part of our fragmentation of our culture. So we go to unified source, we go beyond the description. And Bonnie can go to the next slide. Did we have the correct one, Bonnie?
Yeah.
The older version. You sure you have those documents too?
Do you want me to quickly just go through the other slides? I saved it in one. Is this right?
It might be true. Go to the other one.
This is
the old one. This is the old one.
Old one?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. My bad.
I think it was.
Don't worry. I have it. Just give me 2.
Yeah, number 2. It'll be label number 2, I believe.
Let me go to.
Yeah, so the Carl Jung statement is here, and I was reading off my screen. Actually, I didn't realize your screen, so that's part of the, the illusion of life, I guess. So I was reading my screen, and it was different from your screen. So go ahead to the next slide. So this is principle 1, right? I'm going to go through 5 essential principles. Now, this is deep stuff. We're going from the surface of the waves, and now we're going fishing. We're going fishing into the deeper waters of existence itself, okay? So I'm going to tell you some things that are not presented very often. These are rare understandings. These are pearls in the ocean of existence, and I'm going to go through one by one. And some of you might find it meaningless, some of you might find it relevant, and some of you might find it beautiful, but I'll go through them. Principle number 1, if I don't exist, nothing exists. So if Kishore were never born, he would never know VC existed. If I were never born, my mother had never given birth to me, I probably would, of course, not probably, I would never have known any of you. And if you guys had not been born, you would not have known each other, not known me, or listened to this talk today. So what is within us? What is born with us that makes this whole universe available? Are we taking that for granted, for example? Just as we take the sun for granted and the wind for granted. We take our legs for granted, and we take our consciousness, our cognition for granted. This morning, when you guys greeted each other, and somebody said, hi Jaya, hi Kishore, hi Vani, hi Sundari, hi Prakash, hi VC, the recognition was in a nanosecond, right? There was no time for processing. There is the senses that go into the mind processes it, immediately puts the face to past memory, and the recognition has been made. This cognitive process is a fascinating, amazing process. And from there, from that cognition, we understand that there is something from which we all arise. That awareness from which cognition arises, from cognition, the external world is recognized, the five senses. So if I don't exist, very simple principle, very fundamental principle, nothing exists. So there's something within us. Now, the second aspect, the deeper aspect of this principle is that which we are deep down within ourselves. That's what Jesus was. That's what Buddha was. That's what 5,000 years ago, the caveman looking out at the heavens and saying, aha, what is all this? The same awareness is what we all enter into. It's undifferentiated awareness, and that's what we enter into. You can call it what you want. You can call it God. You can call it Krishna, but it's all go into that. We all come out of that. We all go into that. So I want you to understand that very simple principle that as you delve deeper, you're going to get to a source that is still, that is the windless place. And that the candle that burns in a windless place is a non-flickering candle. It's the sun of existence itself, and that lies deep within us and not external to us. The next slide. So principle number 2, this comes from the East, but it's also, you'll find it in Christian scripture, you'll find it a lot in Sufi literature, and it comes with the simple understanding that the body understands only by name and form. With name and form understanding comes conditioning. With that conditioning comes opinions, judgments, prejudices, right? So you look at a black man, racialism, the Chandala, the caste, all this chaos was created by name form, unfortunately. All religions are responsible for this. All religions created all this mess, and that is all as a result of this name form. What is name form? Name form in Sanskrit is nama rupa. So the body mind is just a mechanical device. Don't take it for anything more than that. And this story goes back to the Greek archives, but it was also cited in Buddhism. And the Buddha explains to his beautiful disciple Ananda, his own cousin, how the body-mind works. He says as follows: the body-mind, Ananda, he says, is like a blind man and a lame man. And this is like one of the parables of Jesus. So both of them are sitting around, it's 12 o'clock, they've got their begging bowls out, but nobody's stopped by to give them any food that particular day. It's a hot Sunday afternoon, the streets are deserted, and they're both getting hungry. So the blind man turns to the lame man and says, hey, what are we going to do? No food today, looks like we're out of luck. Let's go look for some food. And the lame man says, yeah, I wish I could, but I can't walk. What am I going to do? So the blind man tells the lame man, hey, I've got an idea. I can walk, but I cannot see. But you cannot walk, but you can see. So why don't I put you on my shoulders, the blind man says, and you become my seeing eye. So the lame man is pulled up on top of the blind man, and the blind man now begins to walk, and the lame man sitting on top of the blind man says, go left, go right, and there's a restaurant, let's get our food. He says that's all we are. We're just this body-mind complex. But if you take the body-mind complex as yourself, right, then there's birth and death, there's time and space, there's past and present, and you are in a windy place. You're in a mess, the middle of the maelstrom of the mind, of existence itself. But you're not the body mind because you are the observer of body mind. For example, You can see a mind and you can see a body. If you can see a body and mind, then who are you? If you can see the body and you can see the mind, you're neither body nor mind, then what are you? So this is a beautiful statement. Again, I go back to Buddhism because it's an ancient teaching. The Buddha was a master teacher, and he puts things as simply as anybody else, any master teacher would have put it. In the sky, there are no distinctions such as east or west. So the sky is directionless, it is endless, it is nameless. We call it space, we call it sky, we give it directions such as east and west. And behold, the mind says, this is east. I want my house facing east. Okay, you drive north. The GPS tells you, drive north. And 2 miles later, you turn east. And so we take this for real. So that is part of the second illusion that we have. The second illusion is that we take name form to be real. Now, name form has a relative reality. So if I look at Vani, I look at a friend of mine and I say hello, that reality is real, but deep down in a sense, we are the same. Externally as name form, we differ. And so from that name form grew religions, and therefore religions are different. From the name form grew creed and caste, and therefore caste and creeds are different. I remember once listening to Prakash in one of our meetings like this, which I sporadically attended, and he talked about John Lennon's song, Imagine, and what we're doing is going through that song. Imagine was born out of drugs and alcohol and chaos, in which John Lennon was trying hard to find unity in a world that was totally fragmented. He found meaninglessness in that world. He was dejected with the world the way it was, and he went to drugs and alcohol to find peace of mind from a world that was so disparate from his ideals and his goals. And imagine all the people living in this world in peace. And he says, imagine no religion, imagine no country. And that imagining is part of the mental construct, mental projection. But if you follow the path of the masters, if you follow the path of self-understanding, you don't have to imagine anymore. Actually, when imagining stops, reality begins. When imagining ends, reality begins. Yogasya chitta vritti nirodha. When the chitta vritti, when the suffering of mind stuff stops, then you can begin to hear your own voice for the first time. Okay, going to the next slide. Principle 3, mind can only see everything as objects cognized by the senses and by its consciousness. So the mind sees everything in subject-object duality, okay? So the mind calls itself the subject and everything beyond it becomes the object. So look at this beautiful teaching by Ramana. Now, Punja came from North India, and Punja had wandered the Himalayas and went into caves and left his family behind. And he asked every wandering monk, every wandering sannyasi, show me God, show me God. And everybody said, this man is surely crazy. What's wrong with him? But Punja really wanted to find the essence of God. So one wandering monk says, hey, I don't know, I can't show you. But they say that there is a master in Tiruvannamalai in South India. And they say that if anybody can answer your question, it's going to be him. His name is Ramana. So he takes a bus and a car, a cab in those days, was a bullock cart. And then he gets off at the edge of Tiruvannamalai. He walks, he's tired, he's exhausted. He goes into the ashram, and there are 20 people meditating, and Ramana's, looking, they say, with a gazelle-like look, the distant look of somebody who is far removed from worldly existence. Is gazing at the distant mountains in absolute silence. There's stillness in the place. This man goes in, Punja goes in, he sits down with the clutter. He's got this old metal box of his with his only belongings. And the interpreter runs up to him and says, shh, we're meditating now. And he looks at the interpreter angrily, and 1 hour goes by, 2 hours goes by, and the stillness settles down in this man's mind. All the chaos and the struggles, the searches slowly begin to dampen. and he's permeated by a strange, enormous, engulfing silence. A stillness engulfs him. And then Ramana looks in his direction and he says in Tamil, "Yaro vandirka pola irukke, enna kekararu avaru?" Yes, somebody's entered this room. What does he want? And so the interpreter goes up to the man and says, "Wo bol raha hai, kya aapka kya chahiye? What is it that you want, sir?" And so Punja looks at him and says, "Main Ishwar ko dikhana chahta hu. I want to see Ishwar. I want to see God right now." So the man goes back to Ramana and says, "Aur vandu kadavula paakanuma." He wants to see God, and he wants to see God right now, he says. And Ramana smiles at him and says, "I can't show you God. I cannot enable you to see God." The man gets totally angry. He stands up and he starts shouting in Hindi. Punja says, "I came all the way. I left my family. I left my people behind, my kids behind, my job behind. I went to Himalayas. They said, 'You're the only guy. You're giving me no answer different from anybody else.'" And Ramana looks at the interpreter and says, "Tell him that I cannot show you God or enable you to see God, because God is not an object that can be seen. God is a subject. He's always a subject. He's the ultimate seer. Don't concern yourself with objects that can be seen. Find out who the seer is." Okay? What an oxymoron. What a turnaround of a paradigm. "You alone are God," he seemed to laugh with a silent smile, looking at him. What are you looking for outside of yourself when everything exists within you? So for the eye of an individual, the world is an object, heaven is an object, and God is an object. The eye sees itself as the subject, as a seer. For the mind is a subject, and the sense organs are the object. So the mind sees the ear as an object, the eye as an object, the nose as an object, the tongue as an object, the skin as an object. And they all feed and go into the mind, and the mind senses it, and it as a subject sees what the object sees, and then we cognize the manifest world, universe around us. But what cognizes the mind? What is observing the mind? Who is this ultimate seer? And what is the seer that is present with us? What makes the whole universe manifest within us? Can we ever know the seer? So there's a beautiful statement in the Upanishads and a beautiful statement also from Kabir's writings. Kabir says beautifully, "Neno me putli," he says, like the pupil in the eye sees the whole world, but the eye does not see its own pupil. How many of you can see, looking at the screen, you see a computer, you see me or Vani or your friends? How many of you see the pupil through which you see? We don't. Ramana says it beautifully. He says you go and watch a movie and there's fighting going on and a battle going on and there's people dying. When the movie ends, the screen becomes manifest. But when the movie is going on, you get so lost in the movie, you fail to see the screen on which the movie is projected. But a deeper teaching, a beautiful teaching, a profound teaching, Ramana says, the battle happened, there was death, bloodshed, sorrowing wives, crying infants and children who had lost their fathers in the battle, but the screen was totally unaffected by the battle. There was not a drop of blood on the white screen. When you get up to leave the movie, you're affected by the movie, you're affected by what happened, you're touched by it, you don't even see the screen. And the screen was what held the movie together, the screen on which the movie was portrayed. So that awareness within us is on which the whole universe, the movie of the universe, is portrayed. We get lost in the world around us, but not for a second do we look back and see what is the screen on which this whole universe is projected. Who am I? What is I? And if you look into deep, if you use this paradigm and go back to read the Bhagavad Gita, the Quran, the Torah, the Bible, you'll understand it in a beautiful non-dual sense. When you put cognition away And you know, Nisargadatta put it beautifully. He said, don't read Bhagavad Gita from the standpoint of Arjuna. He says, read Bhagavad Gita from the standpoint of Krishna. You know, you read it from a non-dual understanding. No, don't read it as a dual understanding. So I want to stress that principle of subject-object duality, right? We saw body, mind, nama-rupa construct, and we talked about the ultimate awareness. Who am I? The I amness that's within us, from which all of these arise. That was the three principles we talked about. If I don't exist, nothing exists. If I don't exist, the world doesn't exist. When we go to sleep at night, everything disappears. When you wake up in the morning, everything appears. If I am not there, nothing happens. So that's a very basic fundamental understanding. So all I'm doing is pointing out that we're not valuing the source of who we are. We're looking outwards for answers when we've not understood who we are. And when Jesus was asked about heaven, he said, and they asked about, will we go to heaven after we die? He says it beautifully. He says, you have not yet understood your present life, who you are, and you want to worry about what happens after you die. So all the scriptures can be very fundamental tenets of truth. We lost our ways towards these very basic truths. The next slide, the fourth principle. So the fourth principle is the most important principle. It's pure isness. If you look at nature, right, you walk out of your porch or your house, a quiet night, 11 o'clock at night. We don't want to be there when chaotic man is around. That's when all the animals come out at night, because that's when the intruder is not there, right? So when you come out at night, stars, there's a beautiful moon shining, there's a wind blowing, the trees are swaying in the breeze, it's a cool breeze. Everything is as is. The tree accepts the breeze accepts the tree. The moon shines, the stars accept the beauty of the moon. Nothing is different, but the mind grasps for something else. It's always incomplete. It always feels that there is something more that will complete the circle. As a result, the state of the mind is not isness. It's a constant searchingness, if you will, okay? So because of isness, time ends. In isness, the reason I use the word isness is, if I use the present moment, then immediately we think of present as opposed to past and future, because we go back to conditioned thinking. But the present I'm talking about is present, not opposed to either past nor future. It is not even the present. It is not cognitively conditioned or described by the mind. It's a state of absolute being, just isness. Okay? So that's why the statement is beautiful. I'm putting the statement back that was the first slide. This is from Basic Buddhism. And Buddha said to the disciple, do not pursue the past. Do not lose yourself in the future. The past no longer is. The future has yet to come. Looking deeply at life, not superficially at what is in our mind, superficially at what is around us. And he hurt me, he said this, that guy did that, and this world is a crazy place, the pandemic is going to get us. Without looking at it superficially, you look deeply at life as it is, in the very here and now. That's the actual isness, the presence, the absolute presence. And we'll go back to that paradigm slide again with a new understanding as we go back to the slide that comes later. The practitioner, Buddha says, dwells in stability and freedom. He's now in nirvana. He's no longer in a windy place. The candle is now burning bright, and it's getting brighter and brighter as the wind settles down. The cosmic voice of stillness, voice of silence, is becoming louder and louder as our own mental noise becomes quieter and quieter. We must be diligent today, Buddha says. Today is urgent. To wait until tomorrow is too late. Death comes unexpectedly. How can we bargain with death and its mighty hordes? The sage calls a person who dwells in this mindfulness night and day, who lives in absolute presence night and day, the one who knows the better way to live alone. Now, there is a beautiful caveat. Aloneness is different from loneliness. Now, loneliness is when you feel like you miss the world. Now, it's said in Buddhism, it's in Christianity, in the Bible, if you go through and sift through the pages, look deep within. And it is also in Hinduism, in some of the scriptures. So Ramana says it, and Buddha says it too. A man might sit in a cave away from the rest of humanity and think he's alone, physically alone, but his mind is lost in the world. Oh, I left that behind. Oh, I left my alcohol behind. I left my house behind. Oh, I wish I had that beautiful chapati and that sabji, you know, I'm here living on berries. His mind might be lost, but he might not be truly alone. Another man who understands all these principles of isness and nama rupa and body mind existence and is deep within, living deep within the stillness, might be in the middle of the throng of a pandemic, might be in the middle of a crowd, might be in a chaotic movie theater where people are whistling and yelling and shouting, and he's still alone, alone with himself, alone with his own self. And in that self, he finds more bliss than he finds with an external world that's chaotic. The external world that is chaotic, all these masters in the scriptures have told us, gives you bliss at 1 minute and gives sorrow the next. One day you're happy with the birth of a grandchild. Next day you're unhappy and you're sorrowing at the death of a parent. We're going through these mountains and valleys, and life exhausts us. And we are battle fatigued because we think we're part of the battle. We forget that we're actually the screen on which the battle is being enacted. And that is the essence of the Gita. If you look, that is nirvana. That is the essence of a candle in a windless place. Look at this beautiful poem. Wild geese fly over a lake, but do not wish to cast their reflection. They are just flying. They're not saying, oh, look, my reflection. Let's turn this way, flock. Let's get a better reflection. Let's turn this way toward the sun so we are brightly reflected. No, they just fly because flying is their karmic duty. They're doing their nishkama karma, as they call it, a duty that has no ultimate goal. Flying itself is their duty. The journey itself is in the flying. But look, the waters possess no mind to capture their image. However, the images are still cast and the waters still capture the image. But most important, when the geese have left the skies, the images also disappear. So what is the beauty of that statement? It's absolute essence. Everything happens as is. However, our mind puts bells and whistles to this construction, and we're left with scars. We're battle scarred by the battle of life. He said this, he said that, I'm hurt by this, I'm done. So we have, you know, those contrails, that's what they call them. When the aircrafts fly on busy days, now for the last year and a half, we've had no contrails. The skies have been blue because it has not been interrupted by flying airplanes. We don't have wakes in the oceans and contrails to the sky because the flights have not been taken off. But as we get busier, as we come out of the pandemic, on a busy Saturday morning, you come out at 10 o'clock, look up at the skies, you're going to see clouds, you're going to see blue skies, but you're going to see the streaks of where the planes have passed up and down the streaks. And those are the streaks of the blue sky of the mind. That's the wind of our mind. That's the wind of chitta vritti, the suffering of mind and the suffering of thought that all of us are suffering with. And that's why we're not able to see God, we're not able to see spirit, we're not able to see soul, what you name it, we're not able to see ourselves because we are blinded in a sense by the screen of our mind. And the screen of our mind is what is lost in this, in a worldly sense, in illusion. In illusion meaning relative illusion, relative reality. So I'd say when you're pinched, yes, you hurt, but the body mind is relative reality. At 2 a.m. you disappear. When you're under anesthesia, you have no sense of body or mind, right? So that disappears. So that sense of relative reality is what we are lost in. But the absolute reality is what we all come from. Deep in sleep, where Nero goes into, where Jaya goes into, Vani goes into, Preeti goes into, I go into, VC go into, we all enter into the same space. And that is a subjectless, objectless space. We go into a space that has neither subject nor object. For the first time, there is a non-dual space we enter. We're not lost between subject and object. Why subject and object duality is essential? Subject and object duality creates space. In that space, within space, time, birth, death, suffering, sorrow enter within nanoseconds. The tree, a network of mind, quickly gets into that space and grows. And all of a sudden, instead of seeing the present moment as isness, we get lost into the mind. And what is the sad part of that is, while we are sitting on a beautiful Monday morning, on a long weekend day, and it's a beautiful Monday day off, which you haven't had in 3 years, and we're sitting out on the porch having a cup of tea, all of a sudden, when the skies are blue and the trees are lovely, and there's a sky, an eagle in the distant sky, and there's a birds chirping, and there's a butterfly lighting on the flower, all that is forgotten because the mind goes back to a past hurt, right? And we have lost that isness. The fragrance of the presence is lost, and we've gone back to the mind state again, the relative reality of mind-body concoction. So that principle of isness, that's why spending more time on that is very essential. So what's the trap door? We talked about the, we're all doing time. We're doing time. Why? All of us, each one of us is doing time. Until we die, we do time. Doing time in American sense is kambi ennarudhu, right? In Tamil, it's called kambi ennarudhu, kambi endrandha. That is, I remember when we all went and protested for a house urgency salary. I don't know if you remember that. And some of us went into jail, and me and Amar and I think Chandar, I don't know if you were there, Ganesh, all of us were in jail for like 2 hours, and they released us. And then I'm going to tell a funny story just to lighten up this thing, okay? And I was telling my mother and my sister this story sometime back. And Amar drove me back, and his mom was, she had come to pick up in their ubiquitous VW. They had a bug in those days, you know, the famous Amar bug. And Auntie picked us up and dropped, I think, Ganesh and Chandra off, and then dropped me off. By the time I came home, it was 9:30 in the evening, and my dad was waiting outside, extremely anxious. I had not come home. And so I opened the door, and I was getting out, and my dad came up to me and said, "Innada, jailik poiniya? Jail irundya?" I said, "Amampa, career pochra, jail la pokudadra. Ee doctor poriya, medical professional sendutta adukku dhaan amcha unna. Ee jail ka posana unna." நான் சொன்னேன், இல்லப்பா வந்து ஒரு இது ஹவுஸ் சர்வன்ஸ் சேலரிக்கெல்லாம் ஒரு பெரிய இது இருந்தது அப்படி. I said, you know, and he said, நீ உன்னோட கெரியரே போச்சு. Amar's mother was, auntie was with the head bowed. Amar was looking the other direction, and half my leg was out, one leg was out, and one leg was still inside the car. And I listened to the 20-minute lecture that was given by my dad. But I just use that as a simple little, you know, a trivial, jovial moment to say that we're all doing time. And what is the time we do? The time of the mind, the jail of the mind. You know, we are constantly in the jail of the mind, trapped by these things. And that's why going to this isness is important. And that is the trap door. Going back from the state of being lost in this mind jungle and then trying to retreat into the trapdoor, through the trapdoor of self-understanding into the infinite silence of who we truly are. Okay, next slide. And principle number 5 is going to be the most difficult to understand. Now, this is the essence of all the scriptures. If you read the Bhagavad Gita and you constantly keep reading it, and you haven't understood the simple principle, then we might have lost the essence of what the Gita was, or what any of the scriptures were. It doesn't matter if it's a Gita. Now, I'll use the Bhagavad Gita as an example. In that, the big metaphysical battle, right? So Arjuna is looking at Krishna and telling Krishna, how can I, Krishna, kill my own uncle, my own cousin? Duryodhana is my cousin. Dronacharya was my teacher. He taught me how to use my bow and arrow. How can I take the sword and slay him? They're all beloved to me. And Krishna says this beautiful statement. He says, Arjuna, you're slaying no one. They've all been slain by me. Now, you've not, it's very difficult to understand. What is this deeper meaning of this? I mean, it sounds like terrible. I hate the references to slain and battle and swords, and all these scriptures have taken us through the good and bad and battle and peace and the duality to go to the both was a duality and duality of non. So you have to understand a duality first, okay? The important thing is the individual thinker is an illusion. Why is that an illusion? It's an illusion because I'll go back to the metaphor of sleep again. When you're going to sleep, you're who you are. You're getting to the bed, you're saying it's cold, you go back, you get up again, you're restless, you turn on the heat. You come back, again restless, you're a little thirsty. I am thirsty, the mind says. You go and get a drink of water. Then you come back, and then the mind says, oh, my bladder's full. I better empty the bladder before I go to sleep. And the body-mind concoction walks up to the bathroom, and then relieves itself, comes back, and then gets into the bed. And then the eye says, this is not comfortable, and let me try the left position, right position. All of a sudden, the world disappears, time and space disappear, the spouse disappears, the bed disappears, the bed sheet disappears, and your eye, the sense of eye disappears, and you go into deep sleep. So the I that was so existent and so real and wanted so much has suddenly disappeared into nothingness, disappeared into the windless space, disappeared into the fountain of being itself, as Jesus would call it, eternal life. It went into that state. And as the Christian scriptures say beautifully, heaven is within you, he says, Jesus says, they say, lo, heaven is over there. Oh, behind that cloud. Oh, heaven is after you die. And Jesus says, no, heaven is right here within each one of you. Is interpreted differently as in your midst and so on. There are linguistic differences, but that's what it says, okay, within you, all right? So the thought is the thinker. Beautiful, think about it. When you think, you are. Thinker is the thought. There is no thinker thinking the thought. The minute thought arises, thinker arises. And you realize you're thinking your thought. The minute thought arises, thinker arises. When the thinker arises, mind arises. When mind arises, network of thought arises. Network of thought arises. Name and form all arise. When name and form all arise, suffering arises, fear arises, mortality arises, fear of mortality arises, gods and heavens and the whole downstream, as we talk in molecular signaling pathways, the downstream phenomena all start appearing very, very quickly. Within a nanosecond, it all appears. When thought disappears, name form disappears, individual disappears. That means that the thought and the creation of reality are dependent on the thinker. When the thinker quietens down, that relative reality disappears. And for the first time, we see glimpses of a screen, glimpses of our own real being, glimpses of our own real, uncontaminated self. There's a beautiful story from Buddhism. Buddha is very thirsty. It's 2 p.m. and he's been walking. He lived a healthy life. He ate only once at lunch. And, Bhikshandehi, remember, it came from there. And he would make a begging bowl, and whatever food is given, he would eat it. And after eating, they would just sit down under a tree. And Buddha told Ananda, his cousin, who was now in the 60s, Buddha was in his 80s now. And Buddha says, Ananda, I'm a little thirsty. Can you get me some water? Ananda says, I will, sir, if you'll explain to me how to rid my mind completely of the last fragments, last elements of this confusion of worldliness that's in my mind. And Buddha says, Ananda, go get the water and I'll explain it to you. I'm really thirsty. So Ananda goes up to the stream. And as he walks up to the stream, he sees the churning waters of the stream. And the king and his chariot have just passed, the soldiers are passed, and the waters are all muddy. So Ananda says, I cannot take this muddy water to my master. So he sits by the bank and waits for an hour, hour and a half. Water's clear, and he takes the pot, he sinks it into the water and fills the pot, and then he walks back. And he goes to the master, and Buddha shows his cupped hands, and Ananda pours the water, and the Buddha drinks off this water. And Buddha looks up, Ananda, I've been waiting for an hour. What happened to you? You said you'd bring the water a long time ago. And Ananda says, sir, the water was really muddy. The king and his chariots and all the soldiers had just passed, and it was all churned up. So Buddha said, oh, and what did you do, Ananda, to clear the water? Did you go and get into the water and clear it? And Ananda says, no, sir, I just sat by the bank and let the waters clear. And the Buddha, the master teacher that he was, looks at Ananda with a smile and he says, so it is with your mind, Ananda. You let the waters settle. So when we run into confusion in life, our habit is to go in and try to find a solution. And in that very search for a solution for peace, we're churning the waters more and more. To let it be still, let it be quiet, let that mind clear itself is the meaning of this understanding individual is illusion. So that's what Krishna says in the Gita. He says, you've already been killed, meaning, do you understand the deepest teaching, Arjuna? That you as an existent entity, what you believe is a concocted body-mind reality doesn't really exist. You're put together by thought. You're being put together and constructed by thought, and that as a reality disappears, and it's ephemeral. It is transient. It comes and goes. That reality from which you arise neither comes nor goes. There is neither coming nor going. This is the penultimate teaching of all the religions, of all the teachers, of all the masters. If you understand this point, the mind comes and goes, the mind travels. I wrote a poem about 2 years ago. I'll read it to you sometime. I don't have it handy. The poem goes as follows. I board the flight in Chennai. The body and mind climb into the airplane and transport me. I leave Chennai, traveling all night. I'll land in New York, and I get off the flight, and the body mind says, I'm in New York. But that which has transported is still me. The me has not changed. The mind has recognized New York, mind has recognized Chennai, but deep down who you are is essentially the same, has not changed. We've just been transported. So the body mind thinks it's been transported, but deep down the essential reality of who we are is the same. Whether we were in Chennai, it's who we are. Whether in New York, it's who we are. Let's go to the next slide, and I'll finish off after this. So this is T.S. Eliot's beautiful statement. I love this statement. It's probably the most spiritual statement ever made in a poetry format. It's in Little Gidding. If you guys have a chance, read T.S. Eliot. He stole from Upanishads. He stole from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, the Thunder Upanishad. That's what he won the Nobel Prize for. He was an Indologist. He studied Eastern mysticism. We shall not cease from exploration. At the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. We start with ourselves. We go through life trying to find something outside of ourselves. And when we finally get back to bed, let's take day by day. When you get back into bed and you crawl into bed at nighttime after a tiring day, you're coming back to yourself. Aha, back to bed, finally. You are telling yourself you're finally back to yourself. That's what you're telling yourself. At the end of life, as you leave, it is said that Tukaram said, the whole of life is lived for the last moment. We live the whole of life searching for the peace that we only get at the last moment, because at the last moment, we've given up our body and mind and spirit. We've gone to our reality, our source, okay? So going to the next slide. So this is the escape hatch. First, move from the object outside to the subject inside. Who is it that watches the object? Meet yourself for the first time. If you all close yourselves, close your eyes, close your mind, close your, not physically close your eye. I'm talking about closing the eye internally. And you draw yourself. In Upanishads, it says beautifully, like a turtle draws his legs into its shell. You draw the five senses like the way the turtle draws all his legs into its shell. You draw the five senses into yourself, and then you go into a little house that you call yourself. And as you get deeper and deeper into that self, you get to the heart of all existence itself. When you come out of it, outside the world is in chaos and the battle is going on. When you go within yourself, there is that peace, there is that emptiness. This is a paradigm shift that all these religions, this is the sameness of all religions. We get to this point, then religions are not divided. If we don't get to this point, we have misunderstood Jesus, we have misunderstood Buddha, we misunderstood Krishna, we misunderstood Guru Nanak, we misunderstood all these master teachers of Muhammad. So going from fragmented becoming, the paradigm shift goes from a competitive, comparing, describing, judging, nauseating, irritating mind, noisy mind, to pure being, is going from mind to heart. So mind is samsara. That is the mud from which the lotus arises. The self-understanding is the stock that takes us back, the raft, as Buddha referred to, that takes us back to our real self. And pure being, the one that we reach at 2 a.m. in the morning. Ramana says, challenges us, do that when you're alive. Live with that emptiness as you live. Live in a cave with that silence. Don't live with a cave with the mind lost in the world. When you're in the middle of a pandemic, live within that silence of yourself and don't get sucked into the chaos and the maelstrom of the pandemic. When you go from the mind to the heart, then heart is heaven. Heart is Vaikuntham. Heart is Kailash. Heart is the essence from which we come. It is a screen on which the whole of existence is being played. The drama of existence is being played. You remember the master poet Shakespeare. All the world's a stage, and we are merely players, right? What a prophetic statement. What about the beautiful poem that we all learned, and we have said it to our own children and grandchildren now? Row, row, row a boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream, right? What a profound statement with such deep spiritual underpinnings. We never understood it. We just repeated it like we repeat scriptures and repeat religious chants without understanding the deeper underpinnings of all these statements. This is the meaning of the Christian scripture: be still and know that I am. This is enlightenment, and this is true compassion. Next slide. So to put a stop to this noisy mind, Vani, do we have a few more minutes?
Yeah, go ahead. Sure, we do.
Okay, so this is a beautiful statement. Again, I'm pulling from all religions because just to make it relevant to every one of us who come from diverse backgrounds, but we all suffer the suffering of life. We all suffer the loss of parents. We all suffer disease and sickness, and we all suffer from fear of samsara, you know. And so we all have a common origin, a common destination, and a common existence of suffering. So this is a lovely story. I use it when I do presentations all the time. Oh, Angulimala was a terrible bandit in Bihar in those days. Bihar is still a state of bandits, from my understanding. Still got dacoits in there. So Angulimala had 999 fingers. Angulimala, Anguli is finger, Mala is garland. He told, this is what he did. He'll tell his wife, honey, I'm going out hunting today, wish me luck. And he'll go and kill the person who he sees, the first person he sees, behead him, take all his jewels, all his food, everything, bring it back. And that is how he lived and his family lived. 999 fingertips. He woke up one Saturday morning and he told himself, all right, honey, I'm going out for my 1000th fingertip today. Wish me luck. And he goes out. And lo and behold, he sees a sagely being walking on the street. And he told himself, what a simple target, a non-violent creature who would not even fight me. There's no battle here at all. It's one-sided. He starts walking. Is God. Metaphysical tale that takes you from the physical to the metaphysical. Can you guys see me? It says my internet is unstable. Can you guys hear me?
We couldn't hear the last few minutes. If you could repeat
A
it.
little choppy, Guha.
Yeah. So it says
Just
my
repeat
internet.
the last little bit.
Is it better now?
Yeah, no, go ahead. Go ahead. I think it's okay. You know, just sort of
Yeah.
a few seconds and then you
So
get
I'll finish fast. So he says this is an easy target. He runs to the Buddha. Now it's a metaphysical tale. So think of it again as a parable, as a Christian parable, or as an Aesop's fable, or as a tale of self-understanding. As Angulimala runs and runs, the distance between him and Buddha widens. Buddha is only walking. He's not running. He's walking. But Angulimala is unable to catch up with the Buddha. He's running, and the Buddha becomes a little dot in the horizon. So Angulimala is frustrated. He throws his sword in anger and he yells at the sage, hey, you, stop. Angulimala yells. The Buddha, it said, turns around, and all of a sudden, he's immediately next to Angulimala's face. The metaphysical distance has shortened abruptly, and he's next breathing down Angulimala's neck. And the Buddha looks at him with eyes of absolute compassion and looks at Angulimala and says, Angulimala, I stopped eons ago. Many lifetimes have I stopped doing what you're now doing. It is now your turn to stop. And Angulimala fell at his feet at that minute and wept uncontrollably. He pulled out the garland around his neck and threw it. And it said that he became one of the master disciples of the Buddha. The stopping was what? Yes, the physical stopping, the taking of the blade and using it to chop somebody's head, the anger in the mind, the violence in the mind, the hostility in the heart, all that was stopped. But more importantly, what was stopped was the mind-born reality, the concocted reality of him and another, the duality of him and he who is killing, the duality of me and him. Duality ended at that point. At that point, the metaphysical distance shortened. And with the shortening the metaphysical distance, Angulimala was the Buddha and Buddha was Angulimala. That distance had completely shortened. And that was a metaphysical stopping. And that is the stopping we had to do to this mind stuff that Patanjali challenged us. Yogascha chitta vritti nirodha, he said. Yoga is the ending of mind stuff. When the mind stuff ends, yoga, you just join. We will join with our own self. And that self, I tell you, I promise you, deep at 2 a.m. when you sleep, that awareness self doesn't belong to Vani or Jaya or Preeti or Mallika or VC or Ganesh or Chandar or anybody else. It's a space that belongs to everybody. In fact, there is no one who owns that space and no one who can say that space belongs to me. Even the sense of belonging has dropped that space. And that space is what we have to go to in our daily existence. And that is the pathway, the hatch, escape hatch to which we'll find any peace in this world. And this is my statement to everybody. All of us have a right to die without regret, you know. When we die, we should die without regret. And we have to start that process of healing right now, right this moment. The metaphysical distance between what we are and what we wear, what we are and what we want to be should end. It's too late already. And right now it's urgent. As Buddha says, who can wait for, we can't wait for death, and who can take on death in his mighty hordes? He who is diligent now at this minute in the present moment of isness, who reaches isness at this present moment, him I call a sage who knows well how to live alone. And live alone meaning live in that space. But that space, you're not alone. That space is occupied by the Jayas and the Preetis and the Guhas and the Vanis and the VCs of the world. And that space, I promise you, is occupied by our ancestors too. Our parents and grandparents, our ancestors are all occupying the same space. That was a space that Buddha occupied, the space Gandhi occupied, we're now occupying. All of us enter into that same space. Next slide. So I have the paradigm slide after this and the two stories. I'll finish off. This is the statement from Bruce Lee. Empty your mind, he says. Be formless and shapeless, my friend. Become water. You put water into a cup, Bruce Lee says, it becomes the cup. You put water in a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put water in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. It becomes the teacup, it becomes a teapot. Water can flow. Water can be a waterfall that crashes on the rocks below. Become water, my friend. Flow through life. Don't oppose the movement of life. And this is an important story from the Zen archives. A famous professor is confused. He hasn't had the Nobel Prize. People have insulted him. He's well known. He's got like 20 degrees. He's got 200 papers, 10 books. He goes up to the Zen master and tells him, I've done this, I've done that, I've done this, I've done this. Tell me, can you tell me, how can I find peace in this world? And the Zen master begins to pour tea into a teacup. He says, wait a minute, let me give you some tea. Let's drink some tea. And as the Zen master is looking at this professor, he's gazing into the professor's eyes and he's pouring the tea. And the teacup fills and starts overflowing. The professor looks at the Zen master and looks at the teacup, looks at the Zen master, looks at the teacup, and he says, excuse me, sir, the cup is filled. It's already full. It's overflowing. And the Zen master looks at him and says, such is your mind. When your mind is already full with what you've achieved and what you've done so far, how can I fill with anything else? How can this teaching fill you if you're already filled with preformed impression and judgments? So that is the Lao Tzu statement from the Tao tradition. It is emptiness within the cup that makes the cup useful. The cup has a form, it has a shape. It has, like our body and mind has a shape, and it has a place to hold it. Yes, it has utility value, but the utility value depends on the emptiness of the cup. That's where you can actually pour something into the cup. So the cup itself, if you were to smash it into 1,000 pieces, would lose its utility value. So that emptiness is what makes us who we are. And instead of tapping into the emptiness, unfortunately, sadly, we're tapping into the chaos of the already full mind and trying to fill it with scripture and religion. It's not going to work. Next slide. So I'll just read out these statements. Dying to individual mind is taking birth in universal awareness. So when we lose our individual mind, we go to sleep, and when we go to sleep, we enter the universal mind. That mind belongs to no one. Same thing in this lifetime, we have to try and enter, by emptying mind, we enter into universal awareness. This is resurrection of Christianity. This is the Dvija, the twice born of Hinduism, of Judaism, okay? See that you are emptiness, the Tao teaching says, which is Lao Tzu. What a beautiful scripture. You got to read Lao Tzu. It's just lovely. See that your emptiness, always quiet and always at peace. You're always in a place where everything begins, in the space where all things cease. We come out of ourselves, we go back to ourselves, like the turtle that withdraws his legs and goes back into its little shell that calls its home. All things arise and have their day, and then go back to that one single source, returning to serenity with no regret and no remorse. When you see the source within, you only have to say assent. Only say yes. Yes. It is the source. You see that you are everlasting, eternally omnipotent. You are everybody, and everybody is you. Okay. Now going to these other two statements from Shams Tabrizi, who was the guru of Rumi, Rumi's boss, if you will. When everyone is trying to be something, be nothing. And we should stop. We've always been trying to be something as doctors. We are the most ambitious of creatures, actually, physicians. Cardiothoracic surgeon, head of the department, I'm this, I'm that, and I've got a triple degree and quadruple degrees, and I'm board certified and all that, blah, blah, blah. We've been through that chaos of life. When everyone is trying to be something, at some point, like Angulimala stopped, and the Buddha looked at him and said, stop, be nothing, trying to be nothing. Range with emptiness. He says, range with emptiness, meaning you begin with emptiness, end with emptiness, and there's only emptiness in the middle. You don't begin with something and end with something and find emptiness in the middle. Everything is emptiness. A human should be like a pot. As a pot is held by emptiness inside, a wise man is held by the awareness of his own intrinsic nothingness. There's a beautiful meditation by the Buddha. He tells the student how to meditate. He said, sit in this field, on a field, and look around you. You see kusha grass. And then you tell yourself, I'm sitting in a field of kusha grass. Kusha grass is elephant grass. You know, that was the way it was in India in those days. They've all been cut by man now. Then you tell yourself, I'm sitting in a field in kusha grass in a little village. And then you say, I'm sitting in a field of kusha grass in a little village in a city. Then he says, my son, tell yourself, I'm sitting in a field of kusha grass in a village, which is in a city, which is in a country. Then you tell yourself, I'm sitting in a field of kusha grass in a village, in a city, in a country, in the world. Then you tell yourself, I'm sitting in a field of kusha grass in a village, in a city, in a country, in a world, in a galaxy. Then you tell yourself, I'm sitting in a field, in a village, in a city, in a country, in a world, in a galaxy, in the universe. Then you tell yourself, I'm sitting in a field of kusha grass, in a village, in a city, in a country, in a world, in a galaxy, in a universe, in multiverses. You come right back, my son, and ask yourself, where are you? Find yourself in this. And that is true emptiness. That is emptiness, mathematical emptiness, because you find that you're this little speck. But yet, this is the oxymoron. That speck is still aware of this multiverse, aware of this universe. You're nothing and you're yet something. So Nisargadatta says this beautifully. This is the most profound statement I've ever heard, beyond all scripture and all that. Wisdom is knowing I am nothing. Love is knowing I am everything. Between these two, while life moves, I live my daily life. So you enter like a lotus into samsara. You put your foot into samsara of pandemics and suffering and death and cremations and crematoriums and burial grounds. And that is our life of today. And the stock of self-awareness, self-understanding arises, and acceptance arises of world as is. We enter into a state of isness, the trap door, and through that, we blossom as a lotus flower in spite of this world of being, and realize that you are nothing. Samsara is everything. You are samsara from which you arise, and yet you are nothing. And in between, you're the stalk of existence itself. And so that mud, the stalk, and the lotus is our existence. That is the life we live in. And how we find a balance between the stalk, the mud, and the lotus, like the lotus found it. It's smiling and happy in spite of the mud. It found it. It found the balance. It struck the sur, the high note that Kanis hit, and the high note that Prakash hit today in his song. We should hit that high note before we die. We should live a regretless, remorseless life, a careful life, not a careless life, a mindful life, not a mindless life. But the mindful life is actually mindless. It is without mind, living without mind, in a state of absolute emptiness. So we'll go to the next slide. And we'll skip this paradigm slide. We'll come back to that if somebody doesn't understand. Keep going past the slide, Bonnie. Keep on hitting the enter button. This I showed last time for those who weren't there. This is the whole sequence of the net. Keep going. So this is who we are. This is becoming. This is becoming because it becomes and becomes and becomes and never finds an end, and we're infinitely unhappy, right? So now the stopping of this chitta vritti, this mind nonsense is to stop. And it is within our own ability to stop. Next slide, Bonnie. And we go backward now. We're not going forward, and keep going.
Keep going forward.
Yes. Next slide. So we go backward. One more slide. We go backward now into pure I-ness. When we were that 6-year-old or 5-year-old child, or probably 3-year-old, should say, when we first knew we existed, like we said before, very quickly, we didn't remember our intrauterine life, living in a womb. We didn't remember coming out of the mom's vagina. We didn't remember the mom screaming as an episiotomy was done. We didn't remember coming out into the world of existence. We didn't remember our cord being cut, and for the first time, hypoxia setting in. We didn't remember when the doctor held us upside down and gave us a slap on the back and a sharp pain for the first time. The brain awakened, lungs awakened, and we cried and said, oh, and we cried, a squeal, a baby squeal, and our lungs opened. We didn't remember any of that. And then we become 3 years old, and for the first time, 2-3 years old, we have a first vestigial memory begins of I am who I am. And from there, this network of thought, we're going backward to that childhood innocence. And we go back to global awareness, just pureness of a baby. As we hug the baby, what do we get from the baby? The energy of pure beingness. And from there, the portal opens, potential opens for nirvana, of being in that windless state of absolute timeless, birthless, deathless state of being that Krishna was talking about. The state that is beyond death and beyond birth. That's who we actually are. But because we forgot the screen on which this battle is being played out, we got lost in the battle of the movie, the Battle of the Bulge, and we saw the Germans and the Americans fighting out. We lost in the battle of Mahabharata. We forgot that we were the screen of existence itself. I want to finish off with 1 or 2 small stories. Next slide. And then we are done. So We'll go to the next slide. We can skip this, Vani. Two small stories. Again, one from the Buddhist archives. So Ananda asked the Buddha, what do you need, sir? And Buddha says, Ananda, I think we're out of water. Can you go get some? So Ananda strays into the village nearby, and he carries the pot with him, and he sees a beautiful girl drawing water from the well. Her name is Prakriti. So Ananda walks up to this girl, and he looks at her and says, can I have some water for my master? And Prakriti runs from him and hides behind the tree. And she peeks out and she says, I cannot give you water. I'm a Chandala, she says. I'm a untouchable. I belong to the untouchable caste, sir. I cannot give you water. Ananda smiles at her and looks at her and says, Prakriti, I do not ask for your caste. I ask for your water. And Prakriti is beyond herself. She's sobbing. She has never seen such kindness in her life. Never seen somebody who's looked at her with such non-dual gaze of absolute equality. There was no differentiation, and it came naturally to Ananda's eyes. So she runs up to the well with shaking hands. She takes the water from the bucket and pours it. It spills across the bucket, and as Ananda receives it, the pot fills, and Ananda starts, he says, thank you, and he starts walking towards his master's hut, towards Gautama Buddha's hut. Prakriti is in love with this man. Prakriti says, I have to marry this. I've never seen beauty as this. This is the most beautiful human being I've seen. And she follows him and hides behind trees. And she sees him going to Buddha's hut, opening the door. Buddha sits up from his little couch that he has. And Buddha holds his hand, and Ananda pours the water. Buddha drinks, and Buddha lies back. And Ananda closes the door and disappears into the huts behind. The lady looks around, Ananda's missing. And she says, this must be the master he's talking about. So she goes in and quickly opens the creaking old door of the little hut. She opens, and the Buddha's there in, they say, the lion posture. The Buddha would sleep in the lion posture. And he was sleeping and fully aware, in the state of absolute awareness, as she enters, and Buddha looks at her and says, what is it? What is it that you want? And Prakriti says, who is that young man who came in here? And the Buddha smiles, and he knows what is going to happen next. So he says, that's my cousin Ananda. He's my cousin sister's son, my aunt's son. So Prakriti sits on the floor. She says, I need to marry him. I love that man. I just need to marry him. So the Buddha realizes the crisis that Ananda is in. He's been married to celibacy, and he's never going to ever get married. He's transcended. So he's not going to go back to the life. So she comes, he looks at her and says, what happened? So Prakriti says, I've never seen such beauty, such non-duality. He came and said, I don't want your caste. I didn't ask for your caste, Prakriti. She sobs. She's crying. She says, I asked for your water and I gave it to him, and I'm still crying. I'm shaken by this. There's never such beauty I've seen. And so Buddha says, Prakriti, what you love is not his body, mind, not the man. You love his compassion. He says, he looks at her and says, you grow that compassion within yourself. You're ever married to Ananda. And she understands a deepest lesson that compassion too is not external to yourself. Compassion too is something you nurture within yourself. And the last slide is a lovely slide that I use even in high school. I've given talks to Rahul's classmates in the 6th and 7th grade, use this teaching. This is from Ramana's archives. And this is from some of his deepest teachings, actually. So there's a beautiful sage called Ribu. Ribu is a non-dual sage. He teaches the path to oneself. And Nidaga is a student And he goes around asking people, hey, I want to learn more about myself. Somebody tells him, go up the mountain and Ribu can do it for you. He's only about 20 miles from where we live, Nidaga. So Nidaga goes and spends 6 months with Ribu. And the masters finds Nidaga to be a little egoistic and, you know, a little opinionated. So he gives him menial tasks. The துணி போய் துவைச்சிட்டு வா, the பாத்திரம்லாம் இருக்கு பாரு, அதை போய் இந்த பிளேட்ஸ்லாம் போய் கழுவிட்டு வா. So 6 months goes by, Kalapuri, you know, hold my feet, they were hurting. And this boy is listening to some lectures and all that. And after 6 months, Nidaga comes up to the master and says, sir, I think I've learned it all. I am you, you are me, I am the world, the world is me, I am the universe is me. Thank you very much for all your lessons. And he leaves. The master looks at his senior disciple and says, he's not ready yet. He's just starting his journey. But Nidaga is gone. After 2 months, the master asks his disciples, and the Nidaga, where is he? What's he doing? And the disciple says, sir, he's running an ashram in the foot of the mountains, and he's teaching people non-duality. So the master goes down and he stands, and he sees a student standing in a crowd on the street. He goes behind the student and he stands there and he taps the student and says, excuse me, the master is dressed like a beggar. He's got, you know, a little loincloth and he's got a begging bowl and, you know, he put on a fake beard and he goes and he asks and Nidaga says, what, don't you see, old man? It's the king coming in procession. Oh, the king, I'm sorry, sir. A few minutes goes by, the master taps Nidaga again and says, one question after that, I know you're a very busy man. Can you tell me who's the king and which is the procession? Oh my God. So Nidaga turns, you see the king is seated on the elephant. That is the king. You don't know the king and procession? Okay, I'm sorry, my mistake, I'm sorry. A few minutes goes by and the master taps the boy again. Nidaga again says, now I understand king, procession, but you said king and elephant. One last question. Tell me which is the king and which is the elephant. Then I will not ask you any more questions. So Nidaga says, oh God, I can't believe this is happening. He turns and says, listen, the king is on top. Elephant is in the bottom. That big white thing in the bottom, that's the elephant, okay? No more asking questions, old man. And he turns to the procession again. A few minutes goes by and the master taps Nidaga again. Nidaga looks angrily at the master. What is it now? And the master looks at Nidaga and says, thank you very much, elephant, all that I understand now, but you use the word top and bottom. Which is top and which is bottom? Can you tell me that? So Nidaga is now really angry. He tells the people on the crowd, he says, move. And he tells the master, get on your hands and feet, you know, like the military style, 4-point contact, elbow and knees contact. Get on all four, like when you do your Surya Namaskar in yoga, you get on your all fours. So the master gets on all fours. Nidaga climbs on top of him. You see that little picture on the left. Nidaga climbs on top of him and looks at the master and says, now, he points his finger. Last time I'm telling you, old man, no more questions. I am on top. You are on the bottom. The master looks up at him and says, beautiful, thank you for all those lessons. One last question. You said, I am on top and you're at the bottom. Who's I and who's you? And the minute that question is asked, Nidaga remembers it's its master. He gets up immediately and falls at his feet, the story goes. And that's the essence of the so-called Ribu Gita that Ramana, talks about. So I'll stop here, a long little discussion here. Sorry, I took a lot of time, but I'm going to open it up to you guys.
Wow, Guha, that was beautiful, awesome, profound. You know, last time I said you gave us food for thought, a feast to relish. This time I felt you gave us a balm, a soothing ointment for our bleeding hearts. Really, it was so soothing and so comforting to listen to your talk. Some of your parables, some of your thoughts brought smile to my face and sometimes even tears to my eyes. So that was awesome. Thank you so very much. I'm going to open the platform and others can ask questions. We'll again use the chat button. Who wants to go first?
Guha, that was
Speechless.
awesome. Oh my God, I learned so much. Still learning.
Everyone is mesmerized, speechless. We have to give a few minutes, a few seconds, for people to kind of, kind of collect their thoughts.
Vani, I'm sharing this and the other videos to my friends. I hope it's okay.
Guha?
Yeah, no problems for me at all.
Oh.
Give more talks.
Thank you.
Anyone wants to go? Questions?
Like Vani said, we are all mesmerized,
Hi, Vani. Can I say something?
thoughtless and
Yeah, go ahead.
speechless.
Thanks.
Yeah, Chitra.
It was very profound. And I think obviously the talk is a result of a long search for truth and meaning in life of your journey. And I'm sure each and every one of us has had our own journeys and found truth and meaning. And we find at this point, a lot of us have sort of come to the same conclusions. For Prakash and me, both of us exposed to 2 different religions as we grew up. We actually connected in first year when we were talking about similar topics, trying to figure out the truth and meaning in life and how to get at this self-discovery and so on. And it's been an ongoing journey we've been on together. And we actually discovered Unitarian Universalism. And I saw so many times you use the word unified, unity. And that is where we found a situation where we have this so-called religion, but it's more a search for truth and meaning. And the book we have, the hymnal, has all of these things, many of the stuff, the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, the Quran, the Torah, and the teachings of a lot of secular wise people in like Rabindranath Tagore and Native American teachings. So the distillation of all that has helped us on our discovery of the oneness of human beings. And I'm glad to say that in addition to talking the talk, we've been able to walk the walk because we have accepted into our family, my daughter-in-law who has a Christian background, who's white, my daughter's fiancé who is female and Jewish Catholic background. And truly I can say that from practical experience, that this is what has given us happiness and peace, that finding this oneness of humanity and being able to wholeheartedly celebrate it, not just being resigned to it or accepting it with a heavy heart and stuff like that. So in addition to talking the talk, let's all be able to walk the walk. Thanks.
Thank you, Chitra. Thank you for sharing. I agree. You guys are walking the walk. Thank you. Next, Rani Rasmani had a question. Sorry, Rani, go.
No question. Guha, you should give more talks. You heard me, Guha?
Yes. Thanks for saying that.
Yeah. Bye.
Just communication between friends, that's all. There is no, nothing going on. And I feel the reason I opened up, I think, is the old relationships are strong. So I was able to talk openly to you guys.
Yeah, my grandson came on the video for the video chat, and I usually run to attend that call. But today I put that on pause. He's going to be angry with me.
Yeah, family first. Yes.
Yeah, but I wanted to finish listening to you.
Sure. Thanks for saying that.
Okay, Kishore, did you want to say something? Thanks, Rani, by the way. Thank you for your comment and
Sure.
also requesting Guha to come back again. Thanks.
Sure.
I thought Kishore had something to say. If not, we'll go to Malika and then Jaya.
Oh, hello. No, just thanks to Guha. Thank you very much, Guha. I think Shri wanted to say something. Awesome. Guha's here.
Hello, hi. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go.
Now.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear.
Hello?
You, Ranjini.
Hello, can you
Ranjini,
hear
we can
me?
hear you. Ranjini, we can hear you. Keep talking.
Thanks for, I've not been listening continuously, but I've just been catching a few sentences here and there of the speech. I just want to, we are having to do our daily sort of duty in our life, right? From the day that, you know, from the time you can say from school onwards or whatever. It's very difficult, like, for us to focus on God most of the time. And the time that we have very little time doing our puja is the only time where you really can concentrate on Him. Because the other either duty at home, duty at work, or duty to parents, or duty, all this is duty. So how
Sorry, Ranjini, your voice is breaking. We didn't hear the question.
Yeah.
Do you want to type it out?
Can you type it out?
You want to use the chat button?
I think the essence of a question is, Vani, that we're caught up with our life and all our duties so much that there is no time for this introspection or mindful activity, right? So each of us has challenges. Like Chitra was saying, you know, walking the walk is probably the most difficult part of this whole process. But the thing is not to sit for 2 minutes and then spend time with your favorite deity or God, but in living itself is mindfulness. Mindful living, you know, is in every minute of our existence, we are self-aware. I wanted to actually do this exercise with you people, which I forgot to do in the beginning. Each one of us is aware that we exist, right? I mean, we are aware that we are. What an amazing feeling that cognition is. Just think about it. We take it for granted. Like our legs walk and our eyes see, we just take our cognition for granted, but we know we exist. That is where we start. And even as you do your job, as you take care of your grandchild, as you're wheeling the stroller on a crowded street, you're trying to cross the road and it's busy in traffic. As you're crossing, you're also aware that you're self-aware. That self-awareness is emptiness. That is a state of silence. So in a chaotic world, you can be in silence all the time and still live a life that's mindful of traffic and mindful of dangers and mindful of duties and things you have to do. But, you know, like Krishnamurti once said, just give thought its right value. If you give thought too much value, then it goes out on anger, hostility, remorse, accusations, you know, past hurts. All of them come flooding back into a chaotic mind, and the silence and the fragrance of silence is lost. So that's the bottom line, is to learn this practice every time. As you're going through a dying relative, I don't know what happened to Chandra. I need to ask, I didn't get clarification on what happened in his office. But when we go through that process and we are grieving, even as we're grieving, we are aware that we exist, and then that grieving is happening. So that sense of self-awareness is where the heart is. Grieving is where the mind is. So we have to transition those two parts and be more with ourselves and with the world if possible. That has to decrease from 100% to 10, 90 to 20, 10, 70 to 30, 50, 50, 40, 60. And at some point, when we transcend, we're 100% with self-awareness and 0% with the world. That might be very difficult to do for most of us, but the journey should begin, you know.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Response.
Thank you.
Malika?
Yeah, I'm just going to share two things. One is about what Ranjini said and what Chitra was also saying, that in this busy world, or the duties what we have accepted, how do we follow certain things? What Ramana Maharishi did, or Paramahamsa did, or Jesus did. If you see, or even Muhammad Nabi, if you see all of them, I think they devoted a lot of time in silence. And after a long prayer, I remember Jesus and his disciple went to a mountain and they meditated or prayed there in silence for so many days, say 40 days or so. And then after that, they were able to realize so many things what Guha has said. And this concept of God is something which I wanted to share with you all. One is the incident with Paramahamsa, where a disciple of Paramahamsa brings one of his friends who is a doctor, medical doctor like us. And he comes to Paramahamsa and asks, my friend says that you have seen God. So I have not seen God, can you show me? And for that the Paramahamsa says, okay, I want to become a doctor now. You make me a doctor. And then he just laughs out and says that that's impossible. I have gone through 6 years of education and I have worked for say 15 or 20 years. And this is me, I have experienced so much. So Paramahamsa turns around and says, it is similar or even more than that to see God. You have to train yourself to an extent where you can see the God. And another thing I wanted to actually share is, Kannadasan is the Tamil poet. You all would have seen him. Of course, he has written a lot of songs for the movies, but he has also written what is called Arthamulla Indu Madam. In that, he says about God. And I would like to read it in Tamil, but I think some of you may not understand the Tamil version of it. So I'm just going to read some of it in Tamil, English, sorry, the translation or interpretation English. So he asks, what comes after birth? I asked God, be born and you will know, God instructed. What is that which is called learning? I asked. Learn to find out, God instructed. What is that which is called wisdom? I asked. Seek and acquire to find out, God instructed. What is that which is termed kindness? I asked. Bestow it to others to know, God instructed. And what is that which is called affection? Share it to find out, God instructed. What is the bliss experienced in marriage? Get into wedlock to find out, God instructed. So he's asking so many things. What is after death? I asked. When you die, you will know, God instructed. So he's asking, if this life were to be understood by experience, then, oh God, what is your need? I asked. God came a little closer to me and said, I am none other than that experience. So if you see in everything, what is the experience we have is God. It is not, as Guha was explaining, an object or where you can literally see. You can only experience God through all these things. And that's what Kannadasan explains. I thought I'll share it. It's very good when you read it even in Tamil, but I just read the translation in English so that everyone could understand. Thank you very much, Guha. It is very difficult to get that. Of course, the time factor we all say, and that's why I think our elders used to say, you don't have to pray in your prayer room for, say, hours together sometimes. Even if that 5 minutes, if you give that quality time, and especially they will say, if you're doing something good or if you're starting your day, you do it because they think that that sort of silence and meditation helps you to focus on what you're going to do, or it actually channelizes the energy in good things. And we also have a prayer room because sometimes the mind is so, I can say trained, that if you go into a space and you do certain things in that space repeatedly, like a click, when you go into the space, you come into that being. It is like, we would say that to follow a sleep hygiene, you go to bed only to sleep, or you use your bed only to sleep, not eating this, that, so that when you hit the bed, you know you sleep. In the same way, we all have a puja room, we all have an environment or a space. When you learn meditation, they will say, meditate at the same time in a particular place, you know, so that you get into that mode quickly. And I think that sometimes helps when we don't have time. When you follow this, that sometimes helps. It quickly brings you to that mode and you will be able to do it. And I think I have experienced a little bit of that. Thank you for the time, Vani. Thanks a lot, Guha.
Thanks, Malika. That was excellent. Jaya?
Hi, Guha. Thank you for that wonderful talk. It really brought the essence together. So I know all of us have these constant questions as to, how can you be detached but still live in the world? And I think once Sadhguru has said that living in this world is involvement without entanglement. So we're all physicians. So it's like when we see a patient, you are not, you're compassionate. You focus on the patient, you take care of the patient, but you don't carry their burdens with you. And I think that's how we should live our life. And as far as recognizing the stillness, as Malika said, once you recognize that stillness, it is with you, whether you're at the hospital, at home, or anywhere else. So it just sometimes takes practice and just the click of a finger to get there, to be in that stillness. We all have our religions, our rituals. And as you said in our last talk, I think it's like a pointing finger. And it's just amazing, if Guha introduced me to Nisargadatta, so I should really thank him for that. A simple soul who just followed his guru's word, and his insight is just so amazing. Just that last line you said about, wisdom and love. It's just so beautiful, so representative of the entire essence of what you've been trying to convey. And it's just wonderful. If anyone hasn't read it, you should, or if you're interested in exploring more, I think it's a wonderful person to look into. He speaks Marathi, and I actually have that video you gave me, but the translation is excellent, simple language, but it's excellent. But so I think, we have to continue living in this world. We cannot live in this world, we have to go through all that we go through with all the terrible things that are happening around us. But the point is involvement without entanglement. Be compassionate, but not entangle, and realize our essence, our true person, to be happy. Thanks. Thank you, Guha.
Thank you, Jaya.
Yeah, thanks. I think that was a great summary statement to Guha's talk. Thank you. Okay, we'll have Ganapati and then Preeti, and I think we'll end after that unless someone really wants to say something. So go, Ganapati.
I just wanted to share one quote from Lao Tzu, which sort of describes the struggles we all go through. He says, if you're depressed, you are living in the past. If you're anxious, you're living in the future. If you're at peace, you are living in the present. I think we all go through, நம்ம தமிழ்ல இன்னொன்னு சொல்லுவாங்க, பாசவலை, life itself is an illusion, Maya. We all probably, including myself, myself, I've understood it quite sort of a bit late in life, but the struggles that we all go through living this illusion that we are in, we seem to take that is the, that's the end point, which is not. That's what Guha's talk was emphasizing. So thank you, Guha, and thanks for all my friends for enriching my life. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks for the quote, Ganapati. That was great. All right, Preeti?
I don't have to say much. We all have said it. We really appreciate what you've done, Guha and Vani, to bring him to us. One of my Sajarani, like Rani Rasmani said, we need more talks. Jaya, Malli, and quite a few of you might have reached that enlightenment or whatever, but we are all in the nursery class now. At least I'm in the nursery class. I don't know about everyone. So we need more. And a small suggestion, if it is welcome to all of you, we should have something like a panel discussion with questions and answers only, and having Jaya, Malli, or whoever's enlightened. I mean, Vani can select the people, and we should be able to put forward, because one of the things that Jaya said, how do you get there? Okay, it takes sometimes a click of a moment and all that. But no, I mean, how do we know, or how do we get there? Number one. And like Kishore's wife said, Ranjini, I think, like she said, when we are caught up in so many things in the day-to-day life, it's not just the time, it's the frame of the mind or the attitude to go there and look at it in the other way. So how do we do that? To be practical, Chitra said beautifully, you should walk your walk. How do we walk? I mean, probably she had a lot of experience in life and took her. But now there are somebody in the nursery class like me who have been just going through life with all its turmoils. So I mean, I would like more talks on this. It's a very beautiful subject. I've heard a lot of satsangs here, there, everything in bits and pieces, which don't make connection. But these 2 talks of Guha's have connected, brought me down to earth quite a bit. Would like more. Thank you, Guha. A big salute to you.
பிரீத்தி
Ama.
ஏதோ
Yes,
கொஞ்சம் தெரிஞ்ச வச்சு நான் ஏதோ film காட்டினுகிறேன். Wisdom is no, I am nothing. அதுதான்.
Malli, you are always humble. Practice illada paduve, practice illada pesuve. That I know, that doesn't matter. But what you said was very meaningful. I think all will agree.
All right. Thank you, Preeti, for the suggestions. We'll definitely bear that, bear that in mind. So any other questions, anyone? Otherwise, we'll stop here. Thank you all for joining. Thank you all for participating. And most of all,
Thank you, Guha. Thank you,
Thank
Vani.
you.
Thank you, Guha.
Thank you, Vani. Thank you,
This was awesome.
good. Excellent.
Thanks.
அப்பப்போ
Thank you, Guha.
கூட ரப் பண்ணிடுங்க உங்களோட இதெல்லாம்
Guha, thank you.
Nice talking to all of you. It was nice to get together and see you.
Thanks, Guha.
Thanks, Guha. Thanks, Vani.
Thank you, Vani.
Jaya,
Time.
all wonderful.
tomorrow.
Very good.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Depression is past.
Very enlightening, Guha. Thank you.
Hey, Kitu, Kitan.
Hi, Kishore.
Hi.
Thank you,
Bye,
guys.
bye, everybody.
Stay safe.
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye, Kishore.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
bye. I log off.
Bye, Vani.
Bye-bye.